Hey, thanks for joining us. Today we're with Corwin Smith. He is the CEO and coach at Transcend Growth Partners. And today we're going to talk about scaling up.
I'm Josh Farley, president of Redline Electric and Solar. Join me as we talk to contractors, business owners, and experts who are willing to share their experiences to help you overcome obstacles when you're taking your business up and to the right.
Hey, thanks for showing up.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Excited to be on the
So
show.
tell us what you do and who you do it for.
Yeah, I think it would help to add a little context, tell a bit about my background.
Great.
I started my first company when I was in college at Arizona State University, and I was a disaster restoration contractor, fire and flood guy.
Really?
You know, I saw a huge opportunity in the trades because before that I was doing medical sales, and a roommate of mine did disaster restoration, after hours stuff, and so I tagged along with him on a few projects, and I was frankly taken back. And I was taken back because kind of the protocol with the company I worked for and in the industry was, hey, look, if we're short on labor, we'll go pick some guys up on the corner at Home Depot. And the guys we had on the team were pretty sloppy too.
Right.
It just didn't seem right to me, right? And so I started watching, and after about 6 months, I noticed that there was a big trend in the trades. This was back in 2008. Of people hiring guys that frankly looked like criminals. They're kind of scary looking. Nothing wrong with those dudes. My brother's an ex-con, right? Nothing wrong with them, but I didn't want them in my home.
Right.
And I didn't want them in my grandma's home. And I saw a huge opportunity to do things differently. So I worked for this company shortly, and the guy that ran the company reached out to me. He said, hey, let's build something different. And that's kind of where we got our start. It was my junior year at ASU, kicked off. We hit $1.5 million in 2 years, graduated,
Wow.
and grew it quickly. We grew 300% in a year, and it was after growing 300%, which, you know, mentors of mine are like, Corwin, you're an idiot. Don't do it. And I got kind of a big ego.
Sure.
Secret's out,
Sure,
right? Secret's
sure,
out, yeah.
yeah.
And I said, yeah.
Don't
You don't
tell me what I can
understand.
do.
This is my business.
Yeah.
You keep to your own. Sure enough, we grew 300%. January, we literally ran out of cash. Like, line of credit's maxed at the bank.
Right.
We have no money in our bank account. We can't make payroll. And leading up to that, I was relying on a consultant CFO to say, hey, Corwin, you know, here's the throttle. Here's how hard you can push it. He said, hey, keep putting the throttle down. Keep putting the throttle down. And that was the first point. So, you know, it was one of those things, you go home to your wife, tell her, hey, those checks we were getting are gone. And we may have to throw some money into the kitty to keep this thing going in the short term. And then a month and a half later, major company culture issues, right?
Right.
Major company culture issues. And I'd been a member of EO for about 5 years at this point, and I'd had peers of mine telling me about it. It was Rockefeller Habits and then Scaling Up. Hey, Corwin, you probably should read the book.
Right.
And, you know, I don't need that. The cover's purple. It's kind of cheesy. I'm not a tech company. I don't need scaling up.
Right.
I was in a pit and searching. And so right there in the introduction, Vern Harnish, the author, talks about growing broke.
Yep.
And he talks about building a culture that was, you know, awful and unintentional and all the other issues that come with scaling up. And I mean, it hit right to the nerve. And so digging into it, I realized that what I'd done so far was completely unsustainable. Not only because I'd run out of cash, but I sucked at building a company culture. Our processes were a nightmare, the whole thing. And I needed a systematic framework to scale my company.
Right.
You know, like doing this with all my drive and energy and piss and vinegar wasn't sustainable. And so that's when I got introduced to scaling up and ultimately what I do today. Good news is, turned the company around in 90 days, got the bank taken care of. By the way, if you don't bank with a community bank, you need to.
Okay.
If we were with a Wells Fargo or a Chase Bank, they probably would have shut us down.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Community banks are the way to go because you have a relationship with your banker.
Right.
Right? It's a very important thing to be aware of. So luckily we kept a close relationship with the president of the bank, kept our line of credit open, and you know, worked with us to turn the company around financially. And then bigger than that, Josh, what I discovered was I'd created core values only because I had a coach that said, Corwin, you need core values.
Right.
And I said, look, dude, I said, I've worked at a couple companies, they had core values, and they were bullshit.
Right.
They hung on the wall.
Right.
They were platitudes.
Integrity.
Yeah, whatever,
Right,
yeah.
right.
Stupid stuff. And I said, I'm not going to do it. and he pushed and pushed. So a buddy of mine is a founding partner of Kaiser, really great commercial real estate firm in town, and they had operating principles, and they were inspiring to me. So I said, hey, we'll rip those off, change them a bit, make them ours, and paste them on the wall. We got core values, mission accomplished. What I didn't know is that was one of the major things that was driving our absolutely awful company culture.
Right.
Right, was values on the wall that sound really nice. The owner, CEO doesn't even live them himself. So a piece of it too was really intentionally building culture and getting to the core. You know, they're called core values for a reason. It's like the DNA of your organization. Who are we? Not who do we aspire to be.
Right.
Who are we fundamentally? And people are always blown away when training leadership teams, that was their core values. And so I asked them, I said, what really were core values for Enron?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. People hear core values and they think virtues.
Right.
Core values aren't virtues.
Right.
It's your DNA.
Right.
Look, if you got DNA, it's going to lead you to cancer. Like, that's just your DNA. Like, that sucks, man, but that's who you are.
Right.
Yeah. So anyways, turned the company around and started helping peers of mine in EO, coaching them in their companies. And, you know, my mom died at 53. My company runs out of cash. And that same month, my mom passed away suddenly in her sleep. And it was a crucible moment for me to look. My company was failing. My mom died at 53. I don't know how long I'm going to be on the earth.
Right.
Is this what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? Or at least the next 10 years? Look, built a great company, amazing team, in spite of me, right? But I wanted to do something bigger, and I wanted to make a bigger contribution. So started coaching peers of mine and just really realized that I want to help companies scale. And more importantly, help companies scale that want to make a real tangible difference in the world.
Right.
Beyond profits and jobs and things like that. That's cool if you want to do that, like no problem.
Right.
Good for you. I'm just not interested in helping. Because I believe that, you know, it's in business that we can make the biggest transformation socially, culturally, and really solve the world's biggest problems. The government hasn't done it yet.
Sure.
They're not going to do it. It's business that's going to do it. And, you know, when we were going through this discovery of our culture, it got really clear. We spend about 60% of our waking lives at work, right?
Yeah.
So the Mayo Clinic performed a study to figure out who had the biggest impact on an individual's health. Who do you think it was?
Their employer.
Yeah, their boss.
For sure.
Yeah. So, you know, I believe that if we can change the way people come to work and get people really connected to a deeper purpose and build healthy company cultures
Yep.
and scale the rest of the things along the way,
Right.
I can make a little dent.
Well, that's great.
So that's what I do.
So obviously, for me, when we created our core values, that was like the first step. I mean, that was it, and it was. I read The Advantage by Lencioni.
Oh, great.
And I was like, I've got accidental core values. Like,
Sure.
I'm like, I never really put them down, but they're there.
Yeah.
And now they're the ones I don't want. So it was a learning curve creating the ones that I wanted. And once I instituted them, we saw a lot of staffing changes. And you know, there was times where I thought, oh crap, I'm gonna lose everybody.
Yeah.
And then there was times where we did, you
Yeah.
know, just about,
Yeah.
besides a couple of my core, and it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Because now we have the culture that we want,
Yeah.
and we can grow from there. So starting with core values, where do you go? Where do you go after that?
I always love telling the story about when I had to tell the truth, right? Because what had happened is I'd published these core values and said these are our values, which they weren't. I had to tell on myself, right? One of the things most leaders don't want to do is they don't want to be vulnerable in front of their team and tell them about what they screwed up.
Right.
And so I stood in front of them. I was like, guys, these are bullshit.
And we screw up all the time as leaders.
Oh,
Like-
all
like
the
that's-
time. There's no science, man.
Right, for sure.
We're kind of rolling the dice half the time.
Yep.
So, you know, the first thing was I had to tell on myself and, you know, kind of clean out the wound, right? And get honest that, you know, these really weren't our core values. We got to go back to the drawing board. And then once companies get really clear on their values, the next thing, and Jim Collins in his book Good to Great really called it the core or the foundation of a company, is what's our purpose, right? I've heard a lot of purposes that are about like, hey, we're going to create a ton of jobs or, you know, make the CEO a shitload of money. No one
Right.
cares.
Right.
No one cares. Because it's going to line your pockets. It's going to line the CEO's pockets. It doesn't make a difference in the world. You know, Simon Sinek in his book, Start With Why, really a foundational piece around this. He talks about it, that people are motivated by emotion,
Yep.
right? The biggest irony, last year Richard Thaler won a Nobel Peace Prize. What do you think it was for?
I have no idea.
People are irrational.
People are irrational.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It felt like The Onion really gave him the Nobel Peace Prize, right?
Right.
People are irrational.
Yeah,
that was
sure.
the Nobel Peace Prize winner. And the fact is human beings are motivated emotionally.
Right.
And so we spend most of our time reacting and acting from a place of emotion and feeling, and then we use the rest of the time using our cognitive brain to justify why we did it.
Right.
Yeah. So ultimately the values is our DNA, our handful of rules, and the purpose is the difference we make in the world. Values and purpose first.
Right.
And it's got to be a real purpose, a compelling purpose. What's the difference we make in the world?
So the audience here is a bunch of contractors. You know, what kind of what's our purpose? Like for me, that's like it's still I'm not sure. Is it, you know, for us here, it's the purpose is to provide freedom from our employees so they can live a life outside of work. Right. That's pretty much how I created my business, was to provide me freedom to spend with my family. Yeah. I don't have that much freedom as I did when I worked for somebody else, but that's a different story. But that was like the driving purpose behind starting my business. But how do you develop that, or how do you define a purpose as a contractor who doesn't really know how do I become emotional with my employees?
Yeah, so what we discovered when we were creating our purpose was we were in disaster restoration. So we got into people's homes and businesses when it was probably their worst day of like the last 10 years, outside of like a death in the family or something. Their home or business had been flooded, had caught on fire, their sanctuary had been really, really disrupted.
Right.
And so I feel like it may have been a little bit easier for us, but we got really clear that what we do is we come in and we restore people's homes and businesses, and we've got really nice, empathetic technicians that care a whole hell of a lot, and they dress and look like Eagle Scouts, right? That's not our purpose. That's what we do.
Right.
And so we went through a series of questions and inquiry, right? So Simon Sinek wrote, Start with Why.
Start with Why.
Yeah, there we go.
That's right. I would start.
And then he wrote Find Your Why.
Right.
Right. So Find Your Why actually is like a handbook on how to discover your why, individually and as a company. Very, very powerful resource for this. And so it's merely a process of discovery and asking yourself, why do I dedicate my efforts here at Redline Electric? Right. Why does that matter? Why does that matter? Why does that matter? And pretty soon you get to saving the whole world.
Right.
Which probably not entirely going to save the world.
Sure.
We go a step before that.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so, you know, the hook there really, Josh, is it's got to emotionally compel you to do the work you do. Right? Think about the engineers at SpaceX. They're probably paid good. I don't know if they're paid better than someone at, like, you know, Lockheed Martin would pay them.
Right. Who
Right?
knows? Right.
What do you think the purpose is of SpaceX?
Exploration. I mean,
Yeah.
just the future of the future of human life.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, so Elon Musk said it really well. He said his purpose is to make human beings an interplanetary species.
Right.
That's their purpose.
Right.
That's the difference they're going to make in the world. That's significant.
Or like Bill Gates, a computer in every home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Steve Jobs said that the purpose of the computer was like a bicycle for the mind, right? To accelerate the mind. So it's ultimately a process of self-discovery, and usually it lives with the CEO. Why did I start the company? So I started it for freedom. Why does that matter?
Right.
What difference does that make? And it's usually a process of inquiry, 3, 4, 5 whys, done with a peer or a coach, and then, you know, letting it marinate for a bit. You know, I recommend when I first kick off with clients, we're digging into purpose. First whack at it's not going to be great. We're going to get close. You know, it's kind of like triangulating your position with 3 GPS satellites. You know, if we're trying to get to Dallas, Texas, we might land in the Gulf of Mexico. Sure. We're closer than we were, and then we go at it again, and we ask the questions again, and we might get, you know, right there to Houston, and then we go at it again, and we might finally land there in Dallas, Texas.
So you think as far as developing or finding your purpose, do you think the purpose is set in stone, or do you see that it's ever changing for a business owner?
I don't know if it's ever changing, but sometimes it does evolve. Waste management, right? So they found themselves about 18 years ago as a company in a bit of a quandary.
Right.
What was going on 18 years ago related to waste disposal?
It was a nightmare, right? I mean, as far as the landfills?
Yeah, exactly. So people were making a shift globally. They were going from throwing everything away to recycling now.
Gotcha, recycling.
So waste management took a second look and said, hey, we're a garbage company, which is cool. we got to reinvent our purpose here and reinvigorate our purpose. What really is the difference we make in the world? They recreated themselves as North America's largest environmental solutions provider,
Right.
which shifted their business, right? Because ultimately purpose becomes evolutionary for a company. It drives the evolution for a company.
Right.
Yeah, it's really a foundational piece of strategy for a company. And so what they discovered was they developed some of North America's largest recycling capabilities, renewable energy capabilities from trash, right? And then also compost.
Gotcha.
Yeah, food waste.
I've seen a lot of companies change their vision or change their mission. Would you consider the vision and mission the same thing?
No.
Okay, let's explain the difference, just so everybody's clear. Because for us, we have our core values, our mission, and our vision.
Yeah.
But we see a lot of intertwining of those, and
Yeah.
sometimes they get a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit foggy.
Yep.
So when you hear the word vision, what part of your body comes to mind?
Your eyes.
Your eyes.
Sure.
You see where you're going.
Yep.
That's a vision. We see where we're going.
Right.
Right. And so, I love the analogy of scaling Mount Everest, right? Today, I couldn't scale Mount Everest. You put me out on Camelback and I'm going to be wheezing, right?
Right.
Let's tell the truth.
Sure.
Right? But if I decided, hey, this was really important to me and tied to my purpose somehow and the difference I wanted to make in the world to scale Everest, you better believe I'm going to do everything I can to train, get in the physical condition, learn, gather the financial resources, whatever it takes
Right.
to scale Everest.
Right.
That's your vision.
Yep.
Jim Collins called it a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Sure.
Right. And he wrote a really great HBR article around this called Building a Company's Vision. And so Jim Collins said, look, your vision or big, hairy, audacious goal usually is 10 to 30 years out.
Right.
It's aspirational. So there's just a slight twinge of possibility in it.
Yep.
Right? Like, I'm pretty sure if I dedicated my efforts, I could scale Everest, but I got some time to go.
Right.
Right? That's the vision for the company. The mission ultimately is the purpose. I think the two words are interchangeable, right?
Sure.
And the purpose is ultimately the difference we make in the world. Usually the BHAG or vision is an expression of purpose in the world. Tell your employees you want to scale Redline to call it 40 million by December 31st, 2028. Not many of them are going to get on board.
Right.
So Josh can line his pockets.
Right.
But if you get really clear and authentic purpose for the company, and you figure out if our purpose is like, I actually just had a guy that manufactures LED lights in a workshop last week. And I said, why are you doing this? Right? He was actually in oil and gas, brilliant engineer. He said, light is one of the most fundamental sources of being human. Yeah. And the type of light you have in your room, the type of light you have in your buildings actually changes your mood.
Sure.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Sure. Or if you think about all the third world nations that don't even have light.
Yeah.
Just creating a light source.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's really mining and looking, what's the difference we make in the world? What's the impact? And then what's the expression of that at $50 million? How many lives have we touched? How many lives have we changed? Something like that. And it takes work. It's not like a one and done thing. Right. Love the analogy. Have you ever been to one of these Copper Queen mines or big open pit mines in Arizona?
Yeah, I've been out. I've seen a couple of them.
So ultimately what they're doing is they keep mining down and mining down until they finally hit the vein of precious ore. And looking at these things is much a similar way. We got to take multiple whacks at it before it gets right. Right. Yeah. And so, it takes us 6 to 9 month typically time to really get it settled in.
Is that the whole core, the values, the mission, and the vision, as far as all that?
Yeah,
so,
I think it takes time.
And that's all laid out in the framework of scaling up as well.
Yeah, in the strategy section of scaling up. Yep.
So, and that's what you do specifically.
Yeah. So what we discovered, Gazelles has been around since the late 90s. Vern Harnish, who founded Gazelles, he wrote Scaling Up. He also founded EO.
Yep.
And MIT's Birthing a Giants program and Gathering of Titans. And what Vern did, this was in the mid-90s, when he started the program, he said, can I predict the guys that are going to be the most successful in the class, right? What do they get right?
Right.
And what he discovered is, after leading this class, I think it was for 15, 16 years, maybe more, he discovered that they did 4 things distinctly right, 4 decisions they got right. The first one was people. They got the right people on the bus, doing the right things, in the right seats, doing the right things, and as Tom Peters said it, doing the right things right.
Yep.
The next thing they got right was strategy. And strategy is all about differentiation. Not how Redline Solar is better than the next solar company, Solar City. How are we different?
Right.
Right? Love the example, the 770 rule. Right? So owning 7% of the market share, achievable. Only 7% niche, but 70% of that niche, you own it.
Gotcha.
It's about being different, right? And that's what strategy is about. But bigger than that, who do you think drives a strategy in your company today? Is it Josh?
I mean, it's the guys that the customers.
The boots on the ground.
Yeah, it's the guys customers to talk to. Yeah.
So if they don't know our strategy, how can they deliver on it?
Right. They can't.
Impossible.
Right.
Right. So strategy's got to be simple. You know, a phrase or two
Yep.
that everyone in the company knows in and out because they know how we're different and the difference we make in the world. And then finally, execution's all about sanity, right? You got to get the execution right. Train's running on time.
Right.
In execution, the magic that happens here is companies implement scaling up usually recognize 3 to 5x industry standard profits. So
Really?
3 to 5 times industry standard profits.
That's pretty good.
And then finally, the final decision is cash, right? And cash is like oxygen.
For sure.
Yeah, you run out of cash, you don't last long.
And you experienced that personally, and man, there's been times where when starting our business, I go home to my wife and I'm like, we're not gonna get paid this month, so we're gonna have to use what little's in the bank account that you wanted to take the kids to Disneyland with or whatever to pay the mortgage, and we've had our growing pains, and cash flow is king for sure.
So the beauty of it though is in the cash section, there's ways to systematically manage and scale growth so you don't run out of cash.
Gotcha.
One of the biggest discoveries I have coaching CEOs and entrepreneurs, and I had the same discovery as myself, is accounting felt like such a black box. I took accounting in college, I got a business management degree, and accounting was always a black box, right? Like, right. I don't know what was inside, I just knew that I got financials from my CPA or my controller, right. And it was reading the cash section and then even doing a deeper dive, which was Greg Crabtree's Simple Numbers book, which is dynamite for folks that are in entrepreneurial companies, to really simplify the financial statements so that I could really figure out pretty quickly what are the 7 levers or dials I can pull that I have to watch that are going to create the cash and profitability that matter.
Well, and that happened to me, and I know it happens to a lot of my friends that own businesses. Those numbers, I thought they were for my CPA. They're not. They're for you. They're for us as a business owner to see what's going on.
Yeah, one of the most underinvested in resources in a company is accounting. Yeah. Accounting is mission critical to get accurate and timely financial data.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need those to drive the ship.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
So scaling up is your model.
Yep.
We use EOS over here. It's a similar framework.
Yeah.
We heard a lot of people say that they took it from there, which there's a lot of similarities. But just having a framework in place really took my business from where I was to where I wanted to be at the threshold I was at now. Now I'm hitting the plateaus. Now I'm looking at something different. Yeah. Where do you go from scaling up? Like once you have your customers in line there.
Let me answer it this way. Scaling up has been used to scale companies like Rackspace. They exited fall of 16 for $4.3 billion. Wow. Atlassian out of Australia, they did an IPO for almost $5 billion. The founders retained 70% of the stock.
So it's evergreen.
Ever evolving. EOS is a great system. It's an execution system.
Yep.
It's really good for small companies, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, that are trying to go from chaos to order.
Yep.
EOS does that really well. What scaling up does really well is it gets a lot deeper into people and strategy and execution and cash, and it's a framework. Scaling up will serve your company from, startup, it's not as helpful, but once you've gained a critical mass, 15, 20 employees, it'll take you to the moon.
So tell me, what are some of the biggest struggles that you have coaching? Like, what do you see? Do you coach contractors? I know you were contractors, but what?
Yeah, actually, I coach contractors too. I got clients in manufacturing, medicine, professional services, pretty broad. If I was coaching a contractor, I'm not going to tell them how to be a better electrician or better carpenter.
Sure.
I'm not good at that.
Right.
I'm good at the rest.
Right. And I know we all share the same struggles. Like, what's the number one?
The unwillingness for leadership teams and CEOs to confront the brutal facts.
Gotcha.
Right. So Jim Collins, he wrote a book which is really a big piece of scaling up called Good to Great, and it's all about companies that had good stock performance over a period of 40 plus years.
Right.
And then great companies did things differently. Right. and they had extraordinary stock performance. The irony is when I read Good to Great, I said, man, a lot of these companies are out of business.
Right.
What the hell happened?
Right.
And I was kind of annoyed. I said, well, Jim Collins wrote a fake book. Well, he actually wrote a book called How the Mighty Fall. And he wrote How the Mighty Fall in 2008 when Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns are literally collapsing.
Right.
One of the things that Jim Collins talks about in How the Mighty Fall, and it's one of the biggest issues I see in growth companies, is the unwillingness to confront the brutal facts.
Yeah, I know that on our leadership team, we have to have 100% vulnerability, honesty, and just get. It's not anything personal. We need to get it out. We need to go through that issue, and we need to solve those issues.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's confronting the brutal facts, and then the next piece Jim Collins said was, as far as accountability goes, rigorous accountability. Yeah. Not ruthless, but rigorous. Open-hearted and loving accountability. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. So, things get going good, and they're not willing to do the things that'll take them to great.
I agree. Do you like owning your own business?
So when I was getting ready to sell my company, I actually thought I was going to go work for McKinsey & Company or Boston Consulting Group. I actually had a former BCG partner coach me and get me ready for interviews. I was going to go work for the big boys. And there was a piece of me that realized that I'm kind of a feral cat, Sure. You're not going to make me a house cat.
Right.
I don't know that I never grew up saying I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I've always been a bit of a maverick.
Right.
And so, I think it found me versus me finding it.
Awesome. Okay, well, Corwin, I appreciate you coming in. If they're interested in getting a hold of you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so if they just go to transcendgrowth.com, I got a contact form in there, reach out. Happy to help. If it's a quick email, hey, I got a question, happy to help you. If you're looking for more, we can connect and go from there. So a lot of resources, and my purpose ultimately is to help companies scale with more sanity and ease.
For sure. And I think for me personally, having the core values, the mission and vision in place, it really provided a framework and a roadmap to begin something great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, thanks for coming in.
Enjoyed it. Thanks, Josh. You bet.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you like what we're doing here, subscribe to our podcast at iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, and to our YouTube channel to see more episodes. Go to upandtotheright.org to get all the links.